Have you noticed this? The deeper you think, the harder it becomes to talk to other people. Not because you're arrogant, but because, as Schopenhauer cuts in, a high degree of intellect tends to make a man unsocial. That line isn't a complaint. It's a diagnosis of a paradox. Sharper understanding, thicker solitude. You're not abnormal. You're just seeing what others work very hard to gloss over. And that's where the distance begins. Have you felt this kind of distance yourself? Comment 1 if you've noticed that deeper thought makes social connection harder. Comment 2 if you've managed to think deeply and still feel socially integrated. Think of the name's history, both fears and reveres. Socrates questioned so relentlessly, he was made to drink hemlock. Galileo merely said, "The earth moves," and earned house arrest. Tesla reached into a future too early for his century to cradle. Nietzsche laughed at the crutches the crowd adored. They weren't hated for being wrong, but for being right too soon. Society dislikes a mirror. It prefers a warm light that softens edges. And deep thinkers, whether they mean to or not, become that mirror. But why does intelligence trigger defenses more than muscle or money? Because strength and wealth live outside the self. You can admire, envy, even rely on them. Intelligence doesn't stay outside. It stares into the fragile sanctum of the ego, beliefs, habits, worldviews. Your mere presence can wobble what others take for granted. You don't need to lecture. Your silence can be a question. Schopenhauer called life a current of will, blind, grasping, restless. Deep thinking often peels back the glossy lacquer and reveals ancient insecurity beneath. Tug at that curtain, and the temperature in a crowded room drops. People change the subject, laugh it off, say, "Don't overthink it." You're not isolated for lacking social skill. You're speaking a different tongue, the language of truth. So the real question is, why does society resist those who dare to think differently? The answer, as you'll see, runs deeper than morals or culture. It's baked into psychology, etched by evolution, wired into the biology of fear. And if you are a deep thinker, you don't learn this to surrender. You learn it to continue, more lucidly, more patiently, more freely. Why intelligence feels like a personal attack. Have you ever shared a careful, nuanced insight and watched the air change? Shoulders tighten, jokes surface, eyes drift away. You didn't insult anyone. You didn't raise your voice. Yet something in the room bristled. Why? Because intelligence doesn't just present ideas. It implicates identities. Strength lives in the bicep, wealth in the bank. Both sit outside the self. But thought is the self's home address. Question a belief, and you appear to knock on the door of the I. Schopenhauer helps you parse this. The world, for him, divides into representation, how things appear to us, and will, the blind, ceaseless drive pulsing beneath appearances. Most people live inside the comfort of representation, maps, stories, routines. Deep thinking, however, cuts through the wallpaper and shows the brick. It doesn't just replace one opinion with another. It exposes the scaffolding that holds opinions together. That exposure can feel like demolition. This is the mirror effect. Your clarity reflects another's limits. Not because you posture. Your very presence, your way of asking, "How do we know?" can make unexamined certainties wobble. And wobbling certainties register as threat. What awakens isn't reason, but will. That animal alertness to anything that endangers status, belonging, or self-coherence. The mind's watchdog growls before it thinks. Notice how other superiorities play differently. Physical power? People can recruit it, lead us, protect us. Wealth? They can admire or resent it from a safe distance. Neither requires a revision of the self. But intelligence asks for updates to the operating system. It suggests that favorite narratives might be myths, cherished identities, partial, common sense, locally useful but globally fragile. No wonder the social immune system kicks in. Diversion. Let's change the topic. Dilution. You're overthinking. Deflection. You just want to sound smart. The tribal brain and the alarm of the amygdala. You make a subtle point and watch faces harden. Nothing dangerous happened. No threat, no shove, just an idea. So why does the room behave like something needs defending? Because your mind argues in sentences, but your nervous system argues in signals. And the first litigator on the scene is not logic. It's the amygdala, the brain's threat detector. When identities feel questioned, this sentinel doesn't ask, "Is the syllogism valid?" It asks, "Am I safe?" The answer arrives as tension in shoulders. A quick joke, a subject change. That's not rudeness. It's neurodefense. Schopenhauer would nod. Beneath representation sits will, an ancient current tuned for survival. In the Pleistocene, being right mattered less than being together. The tribe punished the odd note. Harmony, even when mistaken, kept you fed and alive. Today, the boardroom and group chat inherit that wiring. What looks like a polite lunch is, to old circuits, a potential status contest. Your careful caveat can feel, to someone's inner sentinel, like a social shove. This is why intelligence trips alarms more readily than strength or wealth. Muscles signal protection. Money signals resources. Both can be recruited by the group. But a destabilizing idea? That asks the group to rewrite its story, to risk friction, renegotiate status, admit uncertainty. The amygdala hates uncertainty. It would rather keep a wrong map everyone agrees on than adopt a better map that divides the caravan. So it throws up defenses. Dismissal, too abstract. Moralizing, some things are better left alone. Pathologizing, you just love complicating things. Have you seen this in action? Comment 1 if you've watched a smart idea trigger tension. Comment 2 if you've seen it open up a better conversation instead. Think of identity as a woven fabric. Your question tugs a single thread. To the cortex, it's just inquiry. To the will, it's unraveling. Thus, the mirror effect becomes biological. Feeling intellectually small can mimic other threat states. Faster heartbeat, slight adrenaline, vigilance. Not because you attacked, but because an inner guardian mistook revision for danger. Your task isn't to extinguish the alarm. It's to escort it, to signal safety while you share truth. Which raises a social paradox. If our brains prize cohesion over accuracy, then in groups, certainty will routinely outcompete subtlety. Why confidence outsells. Intelligence, and how to compete without faking certainty. You've watched it happen. A room falls for the most confident voice, not the most careful mind. A punchy promise beats a nuanced paragraph. Why? Because groups don't primarily reward truth. They reward cohesion. And cohesion loves certainty, the way a sailor loves a fixed star, even if it's slightly off. Confidence is a social solvent. It dissolves doubt quickly. Intelligence is a solvent of another kind. It dissolves illusion, and that takes time, patience, and ego stability the crowd can't always spare. Schopenhauer would say the will prefers smooth passage to accurate maps. The will doesn't ask, "Is this proposition well grounded?" It asks, "Will this steady my hand, quiet my hunger, soothe my fear?" The charismatic simplifier answers yes, boldly, immediately. The subtle thinker answers, "It depends." In a marketplace wired for relief, "It depends" sounds like rain on a parade. Consider the hierarchy of threat. Muscles promise protection. Money promises means. Both pacify the will. But intelligence, with its caveats, counterexamples, and conditional claims, demands the psyche tolerate ambiguity. That's expensive. So crowds outsource certainty to performers who package ideas. Polished slogans, moral clarity, fast takeaways. Populist leaders, motivational speakers, viral influencers aren't only selling messages, they're selling metabolic ease. The fewer mental gears you must shift, the more grateful your nervous system feels. This doesn't mean confidence is fraudulent or intellect must be timid. It means you, as a deep thinker, must shepherd your ideas through the will's gatekeepers. Translation, not dilution. You can keep your depth while shaping your delivery. Lead with the why, shared stakes, before the what, your analysis. The will listens to relevance. Offer waypoints, clear claims, then the nuance beneath. Think headline, scaffolding, footnotes. Use narrative. Stories smuggle complexity past the guard dogs of boredom and threat. Signal psychological safety. Acknowledge uncertainty as competence, not chaos. Here's what we know. Here's what we're testing. When certainty outsells subtlety, you don't have to defect to showmanship. You refine form in service of truth. And once you do, you'll see a deeper obstacle still at play. Biases baked into the mind that tilt the table against careful thought. The bias machine, Dunning-Kruger, status quo, and the backfire trap. You've laid out careful evidence. Someone nods, pauses, then doubles down on the very claim you've just dismantled. It feels surreal, like arguing with a mirror that insists you're the reflection. What's at work isn't simply stubbornness. It's the mind's bias engine humming along, tuned to protect comfort over correction. Start with Schopenhauer's frame. Beneath the show of reasons, the world as representation, moves the will, a blind, insistent current that wants ease, control, continuity. Biases are the will's subtle bodyguards. They don't ask, what's true? They ask, what keeps the story stable? If a fact threatens coherence, the guards don't open the gate. They reroute traffic. Dunning-Kruger is miscalibration in 2 acts. When you know little, you lack the very skills that would reveal your ignorance, so you feel unjustly certain. When you know a lot, you see the ocean of what you don't, so you feel unjustly uncertain. Put these 2 people in a room, and the social optics betray the truth. Overconfidence reads as competence. Humility reads as doubt. The will, hungry for clarity, sides with the louder map, even if it's drawn in crayon. Status quo bias is the warmth of the familiar. The mind treats what is as safer than what could be, even when the new is better. Change is metabolically expensive. New habits, new frames, new risks. So proposals that demand revision. Let's measure outcomes differently. Our model is flawed. Feel like chill winds entering a warm house. The will reaches for a blanket. We've always done it this way. The backfire effect is identity's immune response. When a belief fuses with self, good people like me believe X. Contrary evidence doesn't just challenge a claim, it trespasses on the I. The psyche fights back by producing more antibodies of conviction. You present data. The other person's sense of self produces stronger counterarguments, not because the data is weak, but because the self feels threatened. But even when you do all this, you've noticed another pattern. The same idea that lands in a one-on-one talk collapses in a group. That isn't your imagination. The context effect. One-on-one, candor versus group threat. You've felt the split. In private, someone leans in, curious, open, almost relieved. In a group, the same person hedges, jokes, or opposes you. Did their beliefs change overnight? Unlikely. What changed was the arena of the will. One-on-one, status is relatively stable. There's room for face-saving, nuance, and pauses that don't signal weakness. The amygdala can idle. The self feels less on stage. Your questions land as invitations. In groups, however, the social thermostat spikes. Every claim becomes a signal about hierarchy. Who leads? Who follows? Who risks? Who yields? Accuracy still matters, but belonging matters first. Schopenhauer would say the will, seeking safety and advantage, calibrates to the crowd. The mind doesn't ask only, is this true? It asks, how will this position me? This is why a careful challenge reads, in public, like a status move. Even if you intend cooperation, your analysis can look like an audit. People defend not just ideas, but standing. The mirror effect scales with audience size. When more eyes watch, the ego guards harder. So the psyche reaches for fast armor, certainty, humor, dismissal, anything that avoids appearing less than before witnesses. You can see the mechanics in micro gestures. In private, head tilt, say more, exploratory language. Maybe, let's check. In groups, quicker declaratives, ally-seeking glances, topic shifts towards safer commonplaces. None of this means they're shallow. It means the will is running crowd management software. So how do you navigate without shrinking? Switch formats as strategically as you switch arguments. Plant depth in one-on-ones. Then let others carry it into the group as their own stake. Offer framing that protects face. I'm probably missing something. Can we test this together? Share provisional certainty. Clear interim claims with built-in gateways for others to join. Here's a first pass. What would falsify it? And name the shared risk. When accuracy fails, everyone pays. This converts your contribution from a solo performance into group insurance. Do you approach group dynamics this way? Comment 1 if you tailor your depth based on the setting. Comment 2 if you tend to speak the same way, whether one-on-one or in groups. When you do this, you'll still confront another, deeper current. The kind of will you and others serve. Most people chase comfort. Some chase truth, even when it burns. That schism explains why deep thinkers are often estranged from everyday pursuits. Two wills, two worlds, comfort versus truth, in Schopenhauer's lens. Why do you feel alien in rooms that seem perfectly fine to everyone else? Schopenhauer would say you and the majority are animated by different currents of will. Most people move under the will to live, that blind, pragmatic drive for pleasure, safety, status, and continuity. There's nothing contemptible about it. It oils the hinges of everyday life. But some are tugged by a rarer undertow, the will to truth, a compulsion to see things as they are, even when the sight hurts. Two currents, two climates. Stand long enough at the confluence, and you'll shiver while others sunbathe. In Schopenhauer's architecture, the world exists for us first as representation, convenient surfaces, serviceable stories. The will to live thrives there. Small talk to keep peace, rituals to stabilize time, good enough beliefs to get through Monday. The will to truth, however, keeps prying at the seams. It asks why desire renews itself after every satisfaction, why the ladder of achievement never ends, why comfort, at scale, becomes a narcotic that dulls perception. This prying can look antisocial because it disrupts the usefulness of appearances. If the party needs smoothness, you bring friction. Consider 3 vignettes. In relationships, the will to live cherishes harmony. The will to truth insists on naming patterns, resentment disguised as banter, performative affection, subtle scorekeeping. At work, the will to live optimizes signals, optics, alignment, optics again. The will to truth asks for metrics that actually track value, even if the numbers embarrass the deck. In culture, the will to live loves a tidy narrative arc. The will to truth pulls the camera back and shows the unflattering scaffolding, perverse incentives, survivor bias, the algorithm's thumb on the scale. None of this wins you applause. It wins you a seat near the exit. This distinction doesn't make you superior. It makes your comfort curve different. The will to truth trades immediate ease for structural clarity. And because that trade threatens the social balm, it triggers resistance. From psychology, groups, and now, more than ever, from the digital machines that monetize attention. The algorithmic crowd, why depth drowns in the feed, and how to breathe under it. Open your phone and you can feel it. Ideas sprint, emotions spike, certainty shouts. The platforms insist they're connecting us. What they really optimize is engagement, and engagement favors frictionless feelings over careful thought. In Schopenhauer's terms, the machine is tuned to the will, not the intellect. It feeds the restless drive, novelty, outrage, validation, because the will clicks more than wisdom does. Depth is metabolically costly. It asks you to slow down, hold two truths at once, entertain counterexamples. The feed punishes slowness. It compresses discourse into headlines, clips, and morals pre-chewed for tribal digestion. Nuance bleeds in the cut from 30 minutes to 30 seconds. The crowd rewards the confident simplifier. Bold claims, clean villains, instant hope. The deep thinker offers context, caveats, conditions, and loses the sprint by showing up with hiking boots to a drag race. Notice how the mirror effect mutates online. In person, your presence unsettles. Online, your thread becomes the mirror. Public, permanent, rankable. A correction threatens not just someone's belief, but their performative identity before an audience. Backfire strengthens. Group threat multiplies. The algorithm, sniffing conflict, pours gasoline. More reach for the spiciest replies, less oxygen for patient reconstruction. The will is delighted. The intellect gasps. Yet all is not lost. You can breathe under this water without drowning your thought. Format for survival. Lead with the distilled insight, then thread the scaffolding. Claim why it matters, receipts. Invite depth behind a clear door. Narrative as vessel. Story carries density past boredom's gatekeepers. Frame your analysis as a before, after, a puzzle, a rescue mission. Cadence over flood. Post less, think more. The algorithm punishes pauses. The mind needs them. Choose your battles. Make each entry a keystone piece you can reference. Outsource the mirror. Let allies restate your point in their voice. Many egos accept a truth when it arrives through a familiar lens. Build rooms off-platform. Long-form essays, salons, private forums, places where the tempo matches cognition, not compulsion. The gatekeepers. School, work, and politics versus independent thought. You weren't imagining it. Many of the rooms that shaped you were designed less to cultivate thinking than to standardize it. Schopenhauer argued that most human activity serves the will, stability, status, survival, more than the free play of the intellect. Institutions, built to scale order, translate that priority into policy. School. The timetable carves the day into bells. The curriculum carves knowledge into answers. Curiosity is praised, until it slows the march. You notice the hidden grading rubric: obedience to format, fluency and recall, speed over depth. A child who asks, "Why does this matter?" is labeled a delay, not a spark. The will wants throughput. The intellect wants exploration. When exploration becomes friction, the system trims the sail. You learned early that a neat paragraph outruns a messy question. Work. Organizations talk innovation, then reward predictability. Cultural fit often means don't disturb the equilibrium. Meetings allocate attention to rank, not reason. Slides favor optics of progress. Metrics are chosen for readability, then mistaken for reality. You propose a measurement that could falsify the plan. The room smiles, then redirects. The will safeguards budgets, roles, reputations. Inquiry becomes risk, especially when it reveals sunk costs or sacred cows. Politics. The crowd hungers for narrative calories. Heroes, villains, certainty. Candidates who compress complexity into chance rise faster than those who ask citizens to hold ambivalence. Policy that actually works is often counterintuitive. Trade-offs, lagging gains, quiet wins. But the will demands immediacy and spectacle. Thus the odd spectacle. A thinker's accurate sentence loses to a performer's comforting line. What you feel in these spaces is not personal animus. It's structural preference. Institutions are machines for reducing variance. Deep thought reintroduces variance. So you're tolerated at the edges, brought in for crises, strategy offsites, postmortems, then gently escorted back to the perimeter when the ship wants steady seas again. The move isn't bitterness, it's bilingualism. Learn the grammar of institutions, deadlines, deliverables, diplomacy, while smuggling in the grammar of truth. falsifiability, feedback loops, first principles checks. You can't make the machine love uncertainty. You can teach it to budget for it. Navigation for the outsider, solitude, selectivity, and speaking depth in a shallow age. You're not doomed to drift at the edge of every room, but you also don't have to bargain away your depth to buy a chair at the table. Schopenhauer, dour and luminous, offers a paradoxical compass. Choose solitude, curate company, translate without trimming truth. Solitude as privilege. A high degree of intellect tends to make a man unsocial, he wrote, not as a curse, but as a clarifier. Quiet isn't the absence of life, it's the absence of distortion. Treat solitude as a studio, not a sentence. Ring-fence hours where the will's noise subsides. No feeds, no performative thinking. So the intellect can work without negotiating for applause. You're not hiding, you're forging. Curate your audience. Not every conversation deserves your deepest layer. Save complexity for people, rooms, and formats that can metabolize it. Seek your contemporaries in books, dead and living. Let Socrates tutor your questions, Hypatia your courage, Turing your precision, Tesla your audacity. Build small circles, salons, reading groups, long-form forums, where slowness isn't punished. The right 5 minds are a better market than 50,000 strangers tuned for spectacle. Translate, don't dilute. You can keep your spine and change your posture. Lead with stakes, what the will understands. Then move to structure, what the intellect builds. Use narrative and analogy as ferries that shuttle nuance across busy waters. Offer provisional clarity. Here's my current best model, and what would change it? Invite co-ownership. What would falsify this? You're not dumbing down. You're lifting up access points. Here is the thread that binds every scene. Your isolation isn't proof that you're broken. It's evidence that you're tuned. Schopenhauer names the friction. The will craves ease. The intellect seeks truth. When you refuse the narcotic of quick certainties, you feel the crowd pull away and mistake that ache for failure. But what if it's simply the cost of seeing the machinery behind the show? You've watched how the mirror effect stings egos, how the amygdala mistakes revision for danger, how groups prize cohesion over accuracy, how institutions budget for optics, and how the feed auctions your attention to the highest bidder of outrage. Against this orchestra of momentum, your mind insists on counterpoint. Caveats, context, causes. That isn't contrarianism. It's conscience. Schopenhauer offers a hard mercy. Suffering is not an error in life's code. It's the felt texture of striving. Intelligence intensifies that texture because it exposes the gap between appearance and reality. Yet precisely there, 2 liberations appear. First, art, a suspension of the will, lets you breathe, seeing without clutching. Second, compassion, recognizing the same blind striving in others, softens the edge of judgment. You can stand apart without standing above. So take this as your charter. Protect solitude. Choose your stages. Translate without betrayal. Love truth more than victory, and people more than positions. Your task is not to be universally understood. It is to be usefully clear where clarity can grow. You've walked the hard road clearly now. The mirror effect, the tribal brain, the bias machine, the algorithmic crowd, the gatekeepers, and your own stubborn will to truth beating against them. If you feel separate, it isn't because you're defective. It's because you're oriented toward a different star. Schopenhauer would tell you that most of life is the will chasing comfort. Your work is to see without being captured, to care without being consumed, to speak without needing the choir to sing along. Loneliness is not your identity. It's the weather pattern that accompanies honest vision. So claim your ground. Treat solitude as a studio, not a sentence. Curate your rooms and your readers. Lead with stakes, then open the scaffolding. When resistance spikes, remember, you're disturbing a story that keeps someone warm. Offer a better fire, not just a colder fact. Pause in art when the will roars. Music, Painting, poetry as sanctuaries where seeing can soften. Return with compassion. Everyone you meet is wrestling the same blind engine, just at different depths. Here's your compact. Be usefully clear where clarity can grow. Be patiently silent where it can't. Yet, don't shrink your thought to fit a timeline. Don't scorch your audience to prove a point. Build the habit, the circle, the archive that will outlast the noise. Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see. Aim there, steadily, kindly, unhurried. And now, a question to carry. Where will you place your next beam of light so that it both survives and serves? Choose the conversation, the essay, the experiment, the person. Plant depth where it can root. If this spoke to you, share one moment when your thinking met resistance. What happened? What you learned? What you'll try next? Add your voice below. Join the circle. Bring a friend who needs this map. Subscribe if you'd like the next chapter when it's ready. Long-form ideas, practical scripts, small salons where nuance isn't a liability. You're not an exile from truth. You're a custodian of it. Keep the lamp trimmed. Keep the mirror clean. And when the room grows cold, as old stories crack, be ready with warmth and accuracy. That's how deep thinkers stop being statues erected after the storm and start being neighbors who guide us through it. Have you had to be the neighbor instead of the statue? Comment 1 if you've stepped in to offer clarity when it was hard. Comment 2 if you're still learning how to do that without losing yourself.